Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 14, Episode 139. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here this Friday. Steelers Nation, Dave, the Pittsburgh Steelers wrapping up Week 2 of OTAs. We'll have one more session next week, and then mandatory minicamp in mid-June, and then break for training camp in late July. So status quo here overall. Got a couple things to talk about here. Some roster moves, front office additions, and some more wide receiver talk. How you doing today, Dave?
Yeah, happy Friday to you. Happy Friday to everyone. You got an interesting weekend carved out for yourself, right? You gonna do something neat?
Yeah, there's a short story. There's a company called Extreme Experience where they go around the country and you can kind of drive cool cars and stuff. And so I'm going to go do that this weekend and hopefully be back on Monday to tell you about it. That's my one fear, is keeping the car on the track.
What kind of car are you looking to drive?
It's an Audi R8. It's one of those like Halo cars that's been around. Actually, I think they're finally phasing out the R8. Sadly, Audi is maybe coming up with something new in future years. So always been one of those cars you had on your wall as a kid. Kind of one of those things. People had Lambos and Ferraris. I was always an R8 guy. So that'll be a good time.
How fast can you get it up to? Do they allow you?
There's no speed limit. I mean, there's somebody that will sit next to you that kind of directs you when to hit the gas and when to brake and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, you drive at your own comfort level, essentially. There's no speed limit.
Oh, okay. So I'm sure there's some sort of insurance waivers. You ain't got to put that thing in a wall, are you?
You have to sign up. You have to get insurance. Yes. And I got the highest level possible to give me as much peace of mind as possible.
Yeah, what we used to just do is just kind of run from the cops on a Friday night.
You ever watch? I know we're totally off the beaten trail here. You ever watch I'm sure you haven't, but the YouTube channel Whistling Diesel?
No.
You got to watch him. He does just crazy different videos. It's really insane. He was driving in his most recent one, the General Lee, in front of cops and like racing them and stuff. So I feel like this was your youth embodied in this person today.
What we used to do, we were so poor that I used to have old Datsun B. I probably told this story before. Old Datsun B210 that my cousin Davey gave to me for he went to Alaska, and this thing looked like hell, but man, it had a transmission in it. It would run like a champ. You can wind those damn engines up in those things and really go. What we used to do is he had an old scanner. So what we would do is we would go pick up a suitcase of beer. You used to buy suitcases of beer off the shelf cheaper than you would out of the cooler, because it's just cheaper to buy them off the shelf. So obviously, trying to save you pennies, we used to get a case of beer off the shelf, put it in the back of the old Datsun, fire up the old scanner, and chase the police and ambulance around all night and listen to the calls and show up at wrecks and show up at shootings.
What is the reason for that?
I mean, you just kill time on a Friday and Saturday night, and go around town that way, give you something to do. And man, you put $5 in the gas tank, something like that. I mean, you could drive to Alabama, to Birmingham and back from Pensacola there. But that used to be fun for us. And you start showing up at a couple of these wrecks and all in the same night, the police start noticing you and get mad. But anyway, it was that's how we used to entertain ourselves that way. But anyway, you should have fun. I look forward to hearing the stories, and I beg you to come back in one piece, please.
That's my only goal here, is to not be in pieces for Monday's show. But let's get into some talk here. Friday, Dave, we have a couple things to talk about. As it relates to the Pittsburgh Steelers, they have added to their roster, signing another tight end, Isaiah Gaithings, to a one-year contract, former receiver at Middle Tennessee State, converting to tight end, kind of a hybrid type of guy, never appeared in a regular season game, was with the Chiefs, I believe, last preseason. So it is truly an Arthur Smith design type of offense where you got 6 tight ends on your offseason roster.
Oh, we going to see that 05 personnel?
Get ready for that in the Tom Mead charting.
Oh, boy. Yeah, this one came a little bit out of left field, being as how they already have, so many, tight ends, slash fullbacks on the roster at this point. I almost makes you wonder if maybe someone on the roster is dealing with a hammy or something like that during OTAs. Maybe they needed an extra body for the lines or something like that. But yeah, interesting ad there overall. And we'll talk a little bit more about the tight end position here. I think about one player in particular moving forward here, but that's going to be a minimum contract on him, minimum salary, no signing bonus. I don't think it's hit just yet, but it's easy to decipher what the contract's going to be. That's not going to use any salary cap space in the rule of 51 there. So now we'll just wait and see how long he sticks on the roster overall.
Has Freiermuth been working at OTAs from what you've been able to gather? Has he been a participant with the contract situation? I'm trying to think, has he been maybe limiting himself, as he kind of expects, maybe anticipates an extension? Now, he talked about he's not thinking about it, but it's obviously something that's on the table.
Yeah, that's a good question. I know he's got pictures on Instagram of him running around out there. Okay. So there is that. Seems like I've seen him.
I think he's been doing some stuff, but maybe it's been a bit more limited. It's hard to say. Gaithings kind of reminds me of Rodney Williams. They actually both played in Tennessee colleges at UT Martin for Williams, and then Middle Tennessee State for Gaithings. Williams was a college receiver that transitioned to playing tight end. So there's a similar storyline there. Yeah, he had a tryout, maybe just impressed, and you want to collect talent, and maybe there's some depth aspect as well. Obviously, Gaithings is going to have a really tough time to make the 53, but I think it's early, but it feels like a safe bet that this team will carry 4 tight ends on its week 1 53-man roster. You have Freiermuth, Washington, Connor Hayward likely to make it, and then that 4th tight end spot could be up for grabs between former Falcon Michael Pruitt and then Rodney Williams and Gaithings. Again, unlikely to push, but will be in that mix as well.
How much, speaking of that, boy, I'm take it down a rabbit hole already because we talked a lot about special teams the other day. And quick note here, everybody's acting like I said Justin Fields is going to be out there for 40 kickoffs. I just joked, basically said, could you wrap your mind around basically one time on some sort of gadget pass throwback play, and everybody's acting like I'm suggesting that he gets out there for 30 kickoffs. You people got to listen more distinctively there, and a lot of the nature of that kind of conversation that we had there was, your mind races about these new rules and how you can kind of be creative. And, just one of the things that I thought of was basically just, one situation where you're down and you need a big play and maybe you have something drawn up that can include Justin Fields. I'm not talking about putting Justin Fields out there any other than maybe once the entire season. So just so we're clear on that, so you can stop sending me all the emails related to that. And people talking about got more emails about what do I mean by passes. Obviously, I mean a backwards pass. I mean, you see these things on a heck, it didn't work out good. Who was it? The Patriots versus the Raiders, or where that one was intercepted or whatnot. Teams try these things from time to time. So obviously I'm not talking about dialing up something and running it 4 or 5 times. I'm talking about just one unique situation where maybe you could, have something dialed up for Fields and some sort of unique throwback pass or something like that. So I just want to be clear at that at the top, because you say one thing one way on this podcast and everybody takes it as a whole different way there. But getting back to the special teams rules, would you? And I'm going to kind of circle back to this. remember this as a stopping point. How Pruitt and Rodney Williams fits on the new kind of kickoff block, return in coverage rules. Okay, that's where we need to circle this thing back to. But what do you think about the Kansas City Chiefs and what it sounds like they might be looking forward to do with their kickoff team, particularly?
Sure. I was going to rope that point in. I think when you talk about these new kickoff changes, you have to really open your mind to the things you might see or the things that might at least be tested. There's no guarantee ideas and different strategies stick, but I think you'll see some funky things, especially in the preseason where there's really no risk in attempting some things. But if you haven't heard what Dave Taub, the Chiefs' longtime and well-regarded special teams coordinator, said, is they're testing out, including during OTAs right now, not having their actual kicker, Harrison Butker, kick on kickoffs. They're going to try with Justin Reed, who has kicked off before, I think, with the Texans or last year. They're trying the rugby guy they had signed to kick. And the reason for that is they want another tackler out there. They looked over XFL tape, I guess, from past years and saw that kickers were making the tackle 20 to 40% of the time. And so you need basically all 11 guys to be capable tacklers if there are going to be more returns and chance for bigger plays and a higher probability that return man breaks through that front line and the kicker becomes the last line of defense. And so, will that actually be used in the regular season? We'll see. But again, teams are testing and tweaking and thinking about kickoffs in a brand new way.
Yeah, I found that interesting, and that is really creative. And it's just some of the things that I think we're going to start talking about a little bit more as we move even closer to the season, things such as that. So, and if she had another, man, the NFL needs to get these rosters up to 56 players and the active roster up to, what would that be? 40, what would you go from now?
51 potentially, right? If you had 56-man roster, 5 inactives as your minimum.
Right. So, that's yet another reason. And obviously the NFLPA should be pushing for that because you get more guys full-time jobs, and you could probably expand the practice squad by another couple of players. I mean, a practice squad really should probably be around 20 players anyway, if we're being honest. And the active roster should probably be around 56 players. That's just something to think about, especially with some of these probably trade-offs coming in with the potential 18-game season at one point and all. But anyway, that's a rabbit hole off of a rabbit hole off of a rabbit hole. But what I'm getting at here with some of these ideas and changes that we're going to see with the kickoff and all like that. Tight end is usually your third tight end is usually a guy that's very, very active in special teams, right?
It depends. If they're that big blocking type, then less so. But if you're athletic, and Rodney Williams, for example, last year was, heavily involved on special teams.
I guess what I'm getting at is your fourth tight end, if you so deem to carry one, really probably has to be busy on special teams.
Sure. I just think in general, the more special teams value that you can bring, the better. If you can do something kind of unique in just kind of talking in very broad-based terms, if you're a position player that can kick and have a background there, maybe that's going to be as some sort of use to even carry you on the practice squad as a potential possibility. I mean, again, you got to think about these kickoffs in a radically different way because it's a radically different looking play. And Miles Killebrew spoke yesterday and talked about it's basically a stretch play now, and he thinks it's going to be a lot of explosive plays and a lot more touchdowns this year. So, yeah, guys like Connor Haywood, who's obviously a multi-phase core special teamer, that's going to have value. And then if Rodney Williams can continue to show that team's value, that's going to be really, really important as well. So, yeah, it's going to be hard to justify a player's roster spot, O-lineman aside, although even again, we may see offensive linemen on kick returns potentially. But if you can't bring anything on special teams, given some of the heightened increase in focus there, you become even less valuable than you were before.
All right, I took you around the barn. Now I'm trying to put you back in a stall here. Talking about Michael Pruitt and Rodney Williams in particular there. If you're talking about keeping 4 tight ends in total, and knowing what you think you know right now about the kickoff and all like that, who do you think has a leg up there?
It's close. I mean, I think Pruitt's probably the better blocker. I know we've had some discussions about how we interpret and kind of evaluate his blocking. I think Williams has shown some strides there, but just probably hasn't had to do it as much with his college receiving background. I think Williams would probably have the edge on special teams right now. I'd have to dig into some of Pruitt's background there some more in terms of what he's been doing the last couple of years. I can pull up some of those numbers right now. But yeah, I think Williams is certainly the better athlete and would translate loosely to being the better teams guy.
All right. But I mean, it does. The main takeaway here, I guess, what we're talking about it coming out of week 2 OTAs is it certainly looks like they might be headed toward 4 tight ends.
Sure, which is what I think we had kind of expected. On my way too early roster prediction a couple months ago, I put 4 tight ends on there. And again, you could have even sleep with what about a Jack Coletta, which was a super versatile guy. Could he make a push if he shows up on special teams? That's another name to consider. So really have to focus on special teams more than ever before. And Pruitt, 122 special team snaps last year. Had been around 100 in Tennessee. I'm not entirely sure what units those were. It might have been some field goal stuff. I'm not positive, but at least there appears to be some baseline experience on special teams.
How many tackles did he have? I can find that here.
0, hasn't had a tackle since 2019. He is 32, and so the age is, again, I think Williams is probably gonna get the edge there.
0.000 what you're saying, right?
Yes.
All right. Okay. Talking about along the, you got anything else to kind of add on? What did you talk about the scout already?
No, I did want to get to there. And I apologize. We should have talked about this Wednesday. This news came across Monday or Tuesday, and it's one of my favorite topics. So shame on me for not getting to it on Wednesday's show. But Pittsburgh not been made official by the team, but well reported by Neil Stratton, who covers all things scouting and all things nerdy that's near and dear to my heart. Pittsburgh reportedly hiring Jim Knoll to be an area scout, college scout for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Stratton says he's going to focus on the Northeast region, which makes sense. That's his background. He is a previous scout with the Cleveland Browns, the Kansas City Chiefs. He's worked pro side and college side, but when he has worked college, he's been covering the Northeast. He attended Boston College, and so it's kind of his region overall. And it makes sense because Pittsburgh doesn't really have a true Northeast area scout right now. Dave Pettit had covered that territory in past years, and he got promoted to the pro scouting side and then left the team sometime, appears to be early in 2024. They had Phil Kreidler cover some of that region this year, but Kreidler, wonder if he's going to retire here soon, and probably better to have a full-time dedicated guy. So another addition to an ever-changing scouting side under Omar Khan.
Doesn't look like they've added him to the media side yet.
Yeah, they're typically pretty laggy and delayed on those types of things, but I imagine it will get updated here a couple of weeks from now.
All right. Okay, moving kind of back to the tight end position here. And we talked a little bit about this on the live stream the other night with a lot of listeners there. And just happens to coincide with Darnell Washington talking to the media on Thursday. Let's kind of wrap all the way around that.
With Darnell Washington, yeah. I mean, he talked about that he, is expecting big things in his second year. And obviously it was a relatively quiet rookie season for Washington, probably below expectations. But I think expectations were set a little too high for a guy that, wowed at the combine and, with an incredible frame and blocking ability and what he did at Georgia in his best moments. But a guy that I thought was probably pretty raw, unrefined, had to work on his technique and even kind of deal with his size in the sense of maybe being a little too large in some respects, but he feels more comfortable in year 2 working on becoming more impactful in the passing game. And he thinks in this tight end friendly Arthur Smith offense, he can succeed and thrive.
How much more, obviously we've been talking since Arthur Smith was added that we expect, more 2-3 tight end personnel groupings into tight ends. I think we even talked in the live stream the other night that, you better have a good reason as the roster sits right now to not have Pat Freiermuth potentially be predicted as maybe the second most reception on the team in this offense in 2024, and I think that's realistic. When you talk about Darnell Washington in particular, at least as the roster sits right now, what does that look like with his usage in the passing game? And within that, do you have the Mike Clay prediction? Not that Mike Clay's this huge guru or anything, but we always have fun. He's consistently at the start of every offseason puts out a nice PDF with all the predictions and stat predictions to give you kind of something to play with. Do you have those pulled up so we can look at what he has for Darnell Washington and kind of create over-unders from that?
I can get that for you in just 1 second. He's predicting for Washington 14 receptions, 143 yards, and 1 touchdown.
140, so 14, 143, so 10 yards per reception and just 1 touchdown.
Correct.
I know you would take the over that, right?
I would. I mean, I think we had mentioned this. I'm expecting around 20 or so receptions. I don't know the exact yardage. Would be above that. He was going to catch 20 passes. I think red zone is where he's going to come up and make some plays there. I know it's an obvious thing given his 6'7" frame, but I just base off of the tight end heaviness of this offense, how Arthur Smith has discussed explicitly, he likes to distribute the ball in the red zone. He'll take advantage of a guy with that frame. I don't think he's going to catch 5 touchdowns. That probably feels like a stretch, but I think at least 2 is probably where my head is at with Darnell Washington.
And once again, we could get to the beginning of September and the roster change and what have you, and this could all change. But from where you sit right now, what would you put as kind of his projected ceiling on receptions? I mean, the yards are going to take care of itself. So, but receptions and touchdown receptions.
Yeah, I mean, touchdowns can be one of those funky outlier things where it just depends on a couple opportunities, can make or break. Do you have 2 touchdowns or do you have 4 based on 1 jump ball or 1 contested catch, or does the quarterback see you open on one particular play? From a reception standpoint, I mean, again, he's going to be, in terms of an option, what does he really rank as in this offense? He's behind Pickens, he's behind Freiermuth, he's behind the run game. Is he behind Roman Wilson or some second receiver who steps up? Probably. I mean, I think in terms of high end, just kind of speculating, if Freiermuth stays healthy, we're looking at 25 receptions, probably on the high end of things.
To me, if he hits 25, something's probably happened to Freiermuth.
Probably, but if it is going to be a really tight end heavy offense, it is just simply more snaps and more opportunities, and it may be a bunch of short underneath curl routes and hank concepts and boots in the flat. I mean, I think that's going to be make up a large part of those receptions with a couple vertical concepts mixed in, but that's kind of where I'm at.
I threw that out last night on my Twitter timeline, getting people to way too early projection on Washington and a receiving stat line for him. And boy, there's some very optimistic people here. Got 124 for 205 and 3 TDs, 1 for 22, 410 and 3 TDs, 28 catches, 215, 4 TDs. 36, 496 and 7. Wow. 35, 437 and 3. I can roll, but now there are a few people on the other end of this thing. Got one person here with 9 catches, 130 yards and a TD. Let's see if I find another one in here. More. I can tell you right now, a lot of people have him are early predicting him to have at least 20 or more receptions. And I agree with you that feels very, very high right now, or not very high, but high. It would go if I were to throw a 19.5 reception over under number out. I think that would draw a lot of overaction based on what a lot of these fans are sending me as far as predictions go, but I would be inclined to maybe take the under even on 19.5 receptions.
I know injuries are obviously the wild card, but do you expect Freiermuth to stay healthy the entire 17-game season?
I wouldn't be surprised if he missed like a game and a half.
Sure. So if you factor that in, where there's a game or two where Washington is starting and acting in that manner, where he gets 3-4 catches in those games, that may push that number up a little bit.
Yeah, but by what? 2 more receptions, possibly.
Yeah, but if we're talking a low number of receptions in general, then 2 receptions, 3 receptions in another game makes a difference.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. I'm with you. I think 25 catches seems like, boy, I can't believe he caught 25 balls at the end of the season, kind of thing.
Sure. Again, that's probably high end, even if things stay healthy. I would say realistically, probably in that 15 to 20 catch range. But I think red zone impact is where I'll watch him, because I think Smith will have a couple things designed for him and make some effort to give the big guy the ball.
Look, where they really need to see an increase in him in his game is he needs to become that blocker that we saw him in several games, in Georgia. He needs to become that guy. He needs to become quicker, especially on stuff that slant, on moves back inside, and he just needs to round out and catch up with the speed of the game. As far as we know, when he latches on to people, what he can do, but he just needs to become a more consistent run blocker overall. That's the biggest jump that we need to see in his game in year 2.
Sure. He's got to be this dominant run blocking tight end that the Arthur Smith offense is going to require and demand and want to have that guy. We know Freiermuth at best is an average blocker, and typically you get a lot of snaps where he's not even kind of reaching that bar. So Hayward's undersized, and Pruitt is, I think, adequate, but not going to be a top level type of guy, nor is Rodney Williams. So it really is about Darnell Washington being the anchor in this zone system. Can you reach and cut off guys in the backside? Got to be quick off the ball. I think he has to work on his snap timing. He's got to be able to fire off quicker. He was often too slow last year. And if you're slow off the ball, I don't care how big you are, how long you are, you're going to get beat. You're going to struggle as a blocker. But he improved as the season went on. He can finish. He was making more impactful blocks. But I think just dealing with some of the zone concepts and being able to reach and cut off and fire off the ball with good snap explosiveness is going to be really critical for him. He's got to get out of his stance is really the bottom line here.
Right. Him being the biggest kid on the playground is not as big of a deal right now as it was in college. He's got to have the technique, and he's got to just improve all the way around.
Yeah, the size obviously helps, and there were some dominant reps, I think, towards the end of last year, but the blocking was inconsistent. But I think, to me, and I maybe am an outlier, I don't hear many people talk about this, but I think tight ends, even for guys like Washington that played in more pro-style systems like Georgia, it is just a big jump to go from college to the NFL with the added responsibilities and inline work and the demands of the blocking aspect of it. And for Washington, where the size alone is no longer going to get you by to win, even in the SEC, as it did so often at Georgia, I think typically you see that jump year 1 to year 2 for a lot of tight ends. I think you're going to see that in a similar fashion for Washington in 2024.
He still looks damn good getting off the bus, though, doesn't he?
Yeah, and that clip of the blocking sled yesterday, almost taking out Alfredo Roberts. That's just stuff he can do.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, anything else to add? I wanted to make sure we kind of hit the tight end position, and obviously with the new player on the team there at the position, and Washington talking, and I wanted to make sure we cover that today.
Well, I want to mention with Washington too, I think we maybe mentioned it briefly, but I want to dig into it a little bit more. He talked about, as a route runner, working on getting in and out of his breaks being the big thing he's really emphasizing. And to me, that's just route running 101, especially for a tight end. Can you separate at the break point? And if you can do that, you'll get open. If not, even though you're big, you're kind of trying to box guys out, and guys will be blanketing you, and it's going to be hard to get open off of that. So that's going to be a challenge for him. The way that he tested and the way that he plays on tape did not align. He was much more lethargic and slower and just kind of a lumberer last year. And so that's going to be an issue if he can't really refine. And he's never going to be obviously Kyle Pitts or some crazy move tight end, but can he be able to break down and drop his weight a little more effectively? It's good to work on, and I'm sure there'll be some improvement, but I'm not sure it's going to really ever be a calling card of his game. I think he's really more of a linear, straight line type of a guy.
Yeah, I would agree. And we talked about that after he was drafted and all like that. The ceiling on him as a route runner's already pretty limited, and he's probably really already close to that. But whatever refinement that he can make in the aspect of his route running would help him, reach or exceed that ceiling by a little bit. But once again, he's not going to be that guy, but he can become, one of the better, bigger number 2 tight ends in the league when it comes to route running with a little refinement, probably.
Yeah, in terms of what routes can he win on, vertical seams against cover 2, playing it against, Mike linebackers, boots in the flat off of play action. That's going to be, I think, a pretty core staple of this offense under Arthur Smith. And then just, not zone beaters, but kind of sitting down curls against zone coverage and just underneath getting 5 yards a pop. Those are probably going to be the 3 main routes in which he'll be targeted this year.
Yeah, and the old throw it up where Mama keeps the cookie jar at on the top shelf in the end zone. That's another good one to master.
Yeah, we'll see how many fades. I know Arthur Smith has said he's not a fan of fade routes. I don't know if that applies to tight ends kind of down the seam, or would they maybe even split out Washington occasionally, backside and get him matched up and throw a jump ball. I don't think it's Arthur Smith's favorite concept, but when you have a guy of Washington size, you don't want to discount that possibility. So it'll be interesting. We'll see. We'll have a short quarterback and Wilson thrown to a big tight end. We'll see how often they link up.
Yeah, Russell might have to get on a ladder to throw to him there in the red zone. But yeah, I think we'll see a couple of red zone touchdowns for him this year.
All right, what else from OTAs? One other just kind of minor note here from a news standpoint, not affecting Pittsburgh much, if at all, but former Steelers defensive back safety Elijah Riley, the latest player to go sign with the New York Giants. And so there's a ton of former Steelers out there in East Rutherford, Dave, with Miles Boykin, Allen Robinson, Riley, and then, of course, Gunnar Olszewski signed with the Giants after being cut by Pittsburgh last year and had a bit more NFL success. So Riley, even with all the injuries last year, he had gotten hurt himself too with an ankle, but when he came back, wasn't playing much on defense. Good size, good special teamer, not a bad athlete overall. Again, not really impacting Pittsburgh terribly much, but that is another free agent official departure.
Yeah, Pittsburgh Northeast over there, right?
Feels like it
at this point. There were times where you wondered if this guy could really be a nice special teams asset, and he was okay on special teams. But I mean, for him to have to wait this long into the offseason to get a minimum salaried contract tells you a lot in a league that allows 90-man rosters at this point. So I think that's the book on him. So. Too bad he couldn't stay a little bit more healthier and maybe contribute a little bit more on special teams during his time in Pittsburgh.
Sure, but good luck to him out there with the Giants. From OTAs this week, again, things have wrapped up. Anything else any other players have said? Dante Jackson, he thinks he's a complete cornerback. He talked up his tackling. I didn't think his tackling was as bad as some others evaluated, but I don't know if it's as strong as he's leading on.
Yeah, here's the takeaway after, and this was going to be kind of another topic that or rabbit hole that we went down. I mean, everybody's saying all the right things. It seems like most people are there. Who has missed time? Cameron Hayward has obviously been away. I think TJ Watt has missed some practices for whatever reason. Not a big deal there. I believe someone said yesterday George Pickens was not around yesterday.
Yeah, it sounds like Pickens hasn't been around this week. Again, we're not there to really confirm, so I'm always a bit hesitant on commenting on those things, but it sounds like Pickens has at least missed some of the, again, voluntary OTAs. Want to make that very clear, right. But it sounds like he's not been at every single practice.
I mean, if we wanted to be butts about it, we could go through all the photos or whatnot, all the videos and do a roll call and then get the Steelers PR people pissed off at us. By pointing out who's not at these things. But I mean, overall, I think the attendance sounds like it's been awesome. I think you're hearing all the right things. You hear offensive players talk about how Arthur Smith, a lot of accountability and players holding other players accountable and coaches holding people. I mean, it's not like they're going to come out and say, you know what, Arthur Smith's not really holding us very accountable. All that kind of stuff is just typical fair and there's a lot of things I think from a football in shorts and football against air, things to get excited about and all like that, as you do every off season. But after 6 practices now, is there one cold, hard takeaway that you have coming out of this thing right now? Just one really thing that, I'm glad I know that.
Especially not being there and knowing how much, I'll get to learn and watch at training camp less than 2 months from now. It's really hard to make that the determination. This is not a new or radical or surprising thought, but the tight end emphasis in this offense. I think the tight ends are very, very happy to have Arthur Smith. I'm trying to figure out who's happier that Smith was hired, the running backs, the linemen, and the tight ends. I feel like it's a 3-way tie for first place there. But you hear from all those guys, Freiermuth and Washington and Connor, about just how heavy the tight ends have been involved from a personnel standpoint. I have to assume you're seeing a lot of 12, 13 personnel, guys probably mixing and matching and aligning in different roles and wearing different hats. And that's very much in character with an Arthur Smith offense of past years in Atlanta, lowest level of 11 personnel in the league last year. I think it's 17%, despite being a 7-10 team, was playing catch up late in games. In Tennessee, run heavy, tight end heavy, fullback usage. And so, again, not a new thought, but to confirm kind of the carryover, to me, that's the one thing to hear from player after player, how the tight ends are involved, how friendly of an offense it is to the tight ends. That's kind of my takeaway.
I would agree on that. And I would go on to add maybe potentially kind of the rumblings about the running backs potentially being used, because somebody's going to have to catch some footballs if they don't go out and get another wide receiver for this offense, right?
Sure. Although
we talked about Freiermuth, and I mean that's kind of a Captain Obvious thing there, that especially with using more tight ends. And look, Freiermuth's probably going to sign a deal this offseason. You're going to want to start utilizing some of the things that he can offer you in the passing game that maybe a little above and beyond what his average was those first 2 seasons that he had, which really weren't bad at all. I mean, what was the stat on that about him and Keith Jackson, the only 2 tight ends that had averaged?
That had 60 receptions each of their first 2 years in the NFL.
Right. So, I mean, you definitely need to see that, at least that number out of him in his 4th year. And I mean, heck, he could push 70, 75 receptions potentially, right?
I was actually going to ask you, and we're just kind of projecting. I know we're all kind of guessing, but Heath Miller's career reception mark was 76 in 2009. Can Freiermuth top that in 2024?
That should be at least a target, I would think, the way this roster sits right now. I think it's very plausible. Yeah, if he plays in all the games and they don't go out and add another bigger name receiver to this offense, and if they run what we think they're going to run personnel wise, I think in a 17 game season, that's very plausible for him to break that number, or at least be right at it.
Challenge it. I agree. So long as he can stay healthy, that's going to be the big thing on him. I know he dealt with a ton of nagging stuff from week 1 essentially on last season. What about in yards? Miller's career yard high in a single season was 816. Freiermuth is 732 back in 2022. Can Freiermuth hit 817 this year?
I mean, if he hits that reception number, I don't see why not. Heath Miller was never a big yards per reception guy, though, was he?
His numbers were actually decent. I mean, he got to play with a prime Ben and a open offense, but he was around, I mean, he averaged 11.1 for his career and had many years over 11 and a half, 12 yards, which is a respectable number. Yeah.
Well, if Freiermuth can match that average, then yeah, he and there are, we ought to see more things going, at least with him on some slants and vertical stuff and all like that, and give him an opportunity to run with the football a little bit after the catch and all like that. So yeah, I think the yardage is plausible. Do I think he's going to hit 1,000 yards? No. But I think he could crack the 800 mark.
I think back to your point, I think you were making about the running backs. I agree. They're going to be involved in the pass game, but they have been. I mean, Jalen Warren was second on the team in receptions last year, was nearly first, only 2 catches behind George Pickens. Najee Harris, his rookie year, caught how many passes? I don't know, 74 passes, I think it was. And so, I mean, I think typically you've seen these in recent years, the running backs, and of course, going back to Le'Veon Bell, running backs have always seemed to be pretty involved in this offense.
Yeah, they had between the two of them, like 90 catches last year, something like that. They should be able to top that number, though, right?
Yeah, I think they'll be similar. I know Wilson's check down numbers have been pretty high the last 2 years, and I think bottom line is the running backs will be involved in the pass game. But to me, that's not really a major departure. Now, will they be more design concepts for them? Your wheel route, could they do something like that? Could they split these guys out and have it be more than just checkdowns? Could the screen game be more effective this year with a more athletic offensive line, assuming that Fautanu starts and is out there? That's plausible, but I think just in terms of the raw number, they're going to be, I think, in a similar ballpark as past years.
And I guess the other thing about the running backs, we're probably going to see a little bit more Jaylen Warren carrying the football, right?
I mean, we'll see. I know that Smith's known, well, in Atlanta, he was known for obviously rotating backs and playing different people. In Tennessee, it was the Derrick Henry show. Maybe it's a mix of the two. Obviously, it's not going to be just a one-man band. It's going to be Harris and Warren. I think it's going to be fairly similar to last year, to be honest with you. I think it's going to be a relatively even split. Harris is going to have more carries and be the starter, technically, but they're both going to play a ton. And Warren obviously be the third down back.
Is there a possibility that we could see 2 1,000-yard rushers in Harris and Jaylen Warren in 2024?
I mean, I'd love to see it. That means your run game is working so darn well, and it probably means you're winning some games. But I mean, that's you got to get the carries for it, and are you going to get the big explosive plays? The real home run moments. It's probably pushing it.
You remember the last time this team had 2 1,000-yard rushing running backs?
I know that Franco and Rocky did it. I'm assuming that's the last time it occurred.
Didn't D'Angelo and...
Are you talking about in Pittsburgh or just in the NFL?
No. In Pittsburgh.
Oh, okay. Well, I think in Carolina, Williams and Jonathan Stewart might have done it, but not when Debo came to Pittsburgh.
I'm thinking back to that was a year that Le'Veon got hurt. That
right.
D'Angelo had 1,000, didn't he?
Did he ever have 1,000? He got 907 in 2015. But yeah, it was Bell had to have gotten.
I'm trying to scan
hurt
back
that year.
Here. Oh, he had 907. Okay, for some reason I thought he had 1,000.
Yeah, and Bell had 556 when I think that was where he tore his MCL.
Is there a possibility though that we could see 2,000-yard rushing backs though? I mean, is that plausible?
I don't want to say it's the craziest thing, given how you expect this O-line to be better. You expect a run-heavy approach, probably as run-heavy approach of any team in the NFL this season, but it would still be a pretty high bar to reach. I'm not expecting it. I'll put it that way. I won't put it at 0, but I put the chances pretty low.
Okay. Do you think the two? I mean, you should expect the two to combine for more than they have 1,800 rushing yards combined last season.
Yeah, I would hope so. If you can just rip off a couple, because Najee's long last year was 25, and he's never going to be a guy that consistently rips off the 70-yard touchdown. But if you can even hit a couple runs of 40-plus yards, that boosts your numbers. I think they're both going to run well. They're both going to have good numbers. I want to see their run success rates. Those are numbers I care about, yards per carry. They're both going to be in that 1,000-yard area. I mean, it's not going to be that Warren's going to have 400 yards, but just, to both getting over 4 digits is going to take a lot for that to occur.
All right. Are there any other kind of huge, in other words, if you had been away on the planet Mars and came back after missing these six practices, do you feel like you would have missed anything?
I know where you're leading me here. Not in particular. I mean, we've seen some of the O-line flip-flopping, and, it's interesting to see Fautanu work at right tackle. It seems like that's going to be where he's going to rep, a lot in the spring as he has, and probably a lot in the summer once camp opens up. I know Jones has done both. I know Moore's been at left tackle. But yeah, you tell me, have you got any other impression, any other big takeaway from these last 2 weeks?
I really don't, other than people staying healthy, seemingly healthy, and all the right things coming out of people's mouth. I mean, you don't really learn a lot about a team until you get into training camp, and then obviously in the preseason there. So there have been kind of minor. We talked about heading into OTAs about Fautano and the side that he's going to work on. Well, we had already established the fact about the tight ends and things related to that, and the backs and the usage of the backs and those kind of things there. I guess as far as the defense goes, we were still waiting to kind of see how the whole slot thing works out, right? What else we was kind of a little bit of an unknown about the defense heading into OTAs.
Yeah, I mean, that group is more settled with fewer questions than the offense. I'm just trying to think, even what we've really gotten to hear from some of those guys, but not heard from the defense probably as much as the offense because there's just less of a spotlight on it. I'm not even sure. I mean, Dante Jackson, heard from him, but I don't think it's really been anything we've learned new. It's just not as new of a group. It's the same coordinator. It's the same key players and pieces. Some changes to the more niche and role rotational type of guys. Obviously, that we talked about all the Cam Hayward stuff leading into OTAs, his absence, but there's not really been one storyline to even think about and wonder about, I think, heading into the spring.
Right. I would agree. All right.
One other note here, just ex-Steeler related, I want to mention this as well. Former Steeler Isaiah Buggs has turned himself into police yesterday in Alabama. He's on second-degree charge of animal cruelty. Big story there. He denies the allegations, but I just want to mention that as an ex-Steeler, just a tie in there. He's still on the Chiefs roster for now, signed a reserve futures contract back in January or February. February must have been because of the Super Bowl. So, obviously a situation there. We'll see how it plays out. Not impacting Pittsburgh right now, but wanted to pass that news along to you guys as well.
Okay. This team's still obviously fine when it comes to cap space. And obviously now with June 1st almost here, going to be interesting to see what happens there. Ian Rappaport was on a local sports radio station in Denver and was asked about Courtland Sutton and if he had any sense what way that was trending with them, and kind of an open-ended question about potentially trading him. And Ian and this kind of tacks on to, we went back and found an interview that or a report during Sports Center that Jeremy Fowler had done on, I think it was May 18th, talking about what he was hearing as maybe as far as what Courtland Sutton's wants are as far as salary. I think he said that Sutton looking to maybe to earn 15 to 16 million this season, which is really not much of a bump at all over the 13.6 million that he's scheduled to earn right now on paper there. The takeaway from what Rappaport said is he doesn't get a sense that they're going to trade him, and that the two sides will figure something out that both parties can live with, and just really doesn't get the sense that they will trade Sutton.
I wonder what that means, though, in terms of doesn't get the sense. I mean, Denver has certainly publicly taken that stance and downplayed Sutton's absence from OTAs. I don't know. I mean, again, it's always, in most cases, it's more likely the player stays than he goes, with rare exceptions, Justin Fields being one of them, where you kind of knew, okay, this guy is out, with them going to draft Caleb Williams. We'll have to see. I mean, if it's not Sutton, and some of the other names that come off the board, Juwan Jennings signed an extension with the 49ers. Appears Darius Slayton reworked his deal slightly. He's going to stay with the Giants throughout this year. Then your list becomes either you got to come up with some brand new names or some other option.
Yeah, it's getting shorter and shorter at this point. And look, to make it clear, the whole Courtland Sutton thing, has there ever been one thing throughout this offseason that would lead you that you could seriously wrap a thought around that, hey, they might be considering trading him?
No, there's not been a smoking gun, I guess, quote unquote, of some, hey, here's a big signal that they're looking to deal this guy. It's just been, he seems unhappy. He's missed some of the practice work. They've already traded Jerry Jeudy. Maybe Sean Payton's looking to kind of rebuild this thing from the ground up. Perhaps that's a guy that could be dealt. That's been always the thought.
Right. And it's been mostly on our side of the fence of trying to connect the dots of if the Steelers did go out and get another receiver, who might be potential targets and all like that. So, and that's why we monitor it. And that's why we write about it, because there's not a lot going on, especially at this time of the off season here. But I mean, when you get back to the list of players now, I mean, you got Jennings and they finally got him done. The only thing really development with Deebo Samuel is he changed uniform numbers. And I would imagine anytime you do that, you got to buy out your old stock and all like that. I mean, is he really going to do something like that? If he thought that he was going to get traded, which, I mean, obviously nothing would prevent that from happening. And there's a whole Brandon Ayuk thing and going back to what Lynch said. And, it doesn't seem like there's anything imminent on that front. Slayton getting his deal. What did they do? Throw some incentives in there or something?
Yeah, it appears. I don't know all the details, but there's some workout bonuses. There's, I think, a per game roster bonus in there. So I expect him probably a free agent after this year. I don't think he's going to try to re-up with the Giants, but it appears he'll play the year out with the team.
We had Greg Bell from Seattle tell us that he was glad he would gladly spend 15 minutes telling us that the Seahawks aren't going to trade DK Metcalf. I mean, who else is on the list now that if the Steelers did go that, to me, and it's felt this way for a couple of weeks now, it Courtland Sutton or bust, really.
Yeah, I still won't say no to that, even though Rappaport said what he said. Things can change here pretty quickly, and Rappaport's comments weren't concrete. They just, it was the sense of it. Wasn't, I'm told it wasn't like they have told me that they're not trading him, that Sutton will work something out. I mean, that was not the, it wasn't that concrete. So we'll keep an eye on that one for sure. I don't know. Things could pop up, come training camp. I think at some point we'll have to just sit back and wait. And I don't know what else there really is to say.
Yeah, the only other thing to add is going over once again with OTAs winding down next week. And what do they have? They're probably going to do the team building exercise on Monday and then the 3 practices on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and that'll be it for OTAs. But just reemphasizing the fact, at least historically, that this team, after OTAs, that there's a history of them adding 1, 2, 3 players to the roster that work with the team during OTAs that end up on the 53. So, if you want to tie a hope ribbon around anything, it would be the fact that this roster still probably isn't complete once OTAs, at least when it comes to 53 candidates,
Sure.
This roster probably isn't complete once this team breaks OTAs next week.
I agree. They won't be, and they shouldn't be, because there's still areas this team, I think, has to address and look at. Slot corner, outside receiver being the 2 most notable, and whatever injuries impact the team along the way. I just want to reiterate, I know we discussed it Wednesday. I wrote about it Friday morning for Steelers Depot, but if you do trade for, let's say, a Courtland Sutton, and you do have to give him some sort of slight pay raise, whatever that looks like, it's not going to be an insane amount of money, given how hot the receiver market has gotten and will continue to get. But again, if George Pickens has the type of year that he thinks he's capable of, that this team needs him to have, of 70 plus receptions, well over 1,000 yards, hopefully 6+ touchdowns, whatever the exact figures are, he's going to want a big payday. And we're talking minimum $25 million per year if he has a really strong 2024 season. That's been the benchmark what Nico Collins got, Devonta Smith got. And we could be talking, Dave, realistically, it's going to sound crazy, but $30 million per year potentially, knowing that Jefferson's going to get paid and Lamb's going to get paid, Chase is going to get paid, Ayuk's going to get paid, Higgins will get paid by free agency probably next March. And so that market's already heated up. That's going to be the going rate for wide receivers.
Man, $30 million by this time next year might be the floor.
Yeah. Honestly, it very much could be. And that sounds crazy, but the cap's going to go up. The market's gotten intense. And again, this is all under the assumption that Pickens has a really good 2024. So just put yourself in those shoes for a moment, and then it begins to make more sense.
And look, it's whatever way you dice it, George Pickens, if he stays healthy, he's going to be the leading receiver on this team. It's just by how much. You would expect him to exceed last year's totals, right? Easily.
I especially in receptions and volume, I would. Yes. Right. Now, will he average the yards per catch of last year at 18.1? Maybe that comes down a little bit, but it gets washed out by the additional receptions he should have.
I mean, when you look at now, because Waddle just signed a deal, Nico Collins just signed a deal, and you've still got a couple of guys, like you said, are going to get their deals coming. You have right now 1, 2, 3. You got 3 players at 30 million average yearly value or more, and that number's bound to grow.
You're gonna have like 7 by the time this year ends.
All right. And as things stand right now, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You have 9 receivers with an average of 24 million or more. So, it's only going to go up from there. And I guess we kind of hit on this the other day on the live stream as well too. When you look at the Steelers specifically, and you look at their contracts table of average yearly value and leaders on the team, APY and all like that. Right now, I mean, it's TJ Watt at a little bit more than 28 million. And then below him in second place right now is Minka at 18.2, almost 18.25. What I'm having the biggest issue with wrapping my brain around right now, and you did kind of counteract this by saying, yeah, but maybe a quarterback or something like that at this time next year, which to me would be a fantastic problem or a fantastic thing to be talking about, that one of these 2 quarterbacks, they had enough incentive and reason to extend either Russell Wilson or Justin Fields at a number of, let's say, throw out a number, 25 million or more.
Yeah, 30 million, whatever the number is.
Okay, whatever that is. But the thing I'm having the biggest issue with is by week 1 of 2025, can you sell me on the idea that George Pickens will be the highest paid player under contract with the Steelers?
It's just how the market works. If he wants paid, and if you're going to pay him, that's what the market is telling you. Receivers are getting paid. Again, assuming he's had a really good 2024 season, which he'll have to be able to strong arm a long-term deal next year, then that's the price. My point that I was making, and then I kind of sidetracked myself, was, let's say you trade for Courtland Sutton. That receiver becomes a lot more expensive in terms of what you're spending if you extend out Pickens. And what if you trade for Sutton? Pickens still has the best year of the Steelers receivers. How do you justify Pickens no longer being the highest paid receiver on that team, Sutton being the highest paid receiver, and not doing a deal with Pickens next year? It's hard to tell Pickens, just keep waiting. You're a number 1 receiver, but you're not getting paid like it. That's going to be a tough sell.
Oh, yeah, you're going to have to pay him or else you ain't going to see him.
Right. So, and if you do pay him, again, that cost is going to be higher, and that meter's going up every single day.
Well, look, let's first start. What is Courtland Sutton's value realistically? There's a talk about Fowler and 15, 16 million, all like that. To me, that's the absolute ceiling with him. When you go back and look at since he got paid in November of 2021, I think it was, the 2 previous seasons. I wrote about this yesterday, so I know it's fresh on my mind. 2022 and 2023, and people can point to the offense and Sean Payton and yada yada whatever. There in 2023, 2022 and 2023 combined, there were 31 other receivers in the NFL with more receptions and more receiving yards than him. Okay.
Sure.
So he can want all he wants, but his value, if we're being real, and his average yearly value anyway right now is $15 million based on his contract. That it seems like they got him at a right number, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. What I'm getting at is even if for some reason the Steelers traded for him and gave him a little bit more money, it's not going up much more from a new money average than 15 million. He might get to 16 or 17 million, but that is absolute tops with him. And I guess what I'm getting at here with that is the fact that that number is going to be absolutely meaningless to George Pickens.
Well, yes, but that's my point is whether he's making 13 million, whether it's 15, 16, he's making more than George Pickens on his rookie deal, right? And so Pickens is going to say, I'm the number one receiver on this team, and I just had a really good 2024. I need to be paid more than Courtland Sutton. And so I need to be paid because I deserve to get paid. I'm eligible to get paid. And then what does that cost me? And at that point, Sutton's number goes out the window, but the market's going to demand maybe 30 million for him next year.
Right. But I mean, even if Courtland Sutton's not on this team, all right, barring something catastrophic happen to George Pickens, his hand's going to be out next offseason regardless.
Sure, but it'll be harder for Pittsburgh to say no if they were to trade Sutton, and your receiver also just more expensive. You're allocating a lot more money to receiver. You have to consider that aspect if you're going to trade for a receiver this year and pay him a decent sum like Sutton would cost, not crazy, but decent. You understand that you have to pay Pickens and make sure you're allocating all that into your future cap, expenses.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is telling Pickens no or not now is not even going to be an option for Pickens' side next year. He's going to say, try again.
Right, fair. So yeah, putting Sutton aside, my main central point is if Pickens has the year he's capable of having, the headline of next year throughout the offseason, the way that it's kind of Hayward now, the way that it's looking for a receiver now, next year's headline will be, will this team pay Pickens? Should they pay Pickens? And also, you can talk about this more than I can, but what will the structure of that deal look like? Will he ask for second year salary guarantees and third year guarantees? I don't know what the receivers are getting right now. I don't know what AJ Brown got, what Waddle got, what I'm sure these upcoming receivers will be getting something like that, the Jeffersons and the Chases, Ayuk's, Lambs of the world. How does Pittsburgh handle that? Because they don't typically do that unless it's a number one market deal. Pickens won't be number one, but it's going to be the number one on the team. So how do you handle all those things? It's going to be really tricky.
Okay, but what if he does catch 100 balls for? What if look, he's going to have he should have a career season, right?
In receptions, at least, yeah. I mean, he should have a really, really good year. I mean, will he get the exact yards? He'll be in that area, maybe 100 more, maybe 50 less, but he'll be in that range.
All right. I guess what I'm getting at is it plausible he has the kind of season in 2024 that would result in him having a good reason to aim for top 3 market money?
He could, but if it's not number one, Pittsburgh has, their line seems to be, we only do the future guarantees.
Right.
If you're a true number one, which was TJ Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick, highest paid at their position, or a quarterback. And unless Pickens is number one, that precedent will be butted up against.
Right. And I think you answered your own question there. They're not going to bend for that, I wouldn't think.
You wouldn't think, but they bent on TJ Watt. They bent on Minka Fitzpatrick. That at some point in the future, they're going to bend, I assume, right?
Those were top of the market deals. I mean,
sure.
I guess what you're saying, will they move the bar down to, okay, well, you're a top 3 highest paid.
Right. Or number one on the team, which he would be, currently, putting quarterback stuff aside.
They've been talking for years that, a handful of these teams, the Steelers and the Packers and the Bengals, will eventually have to budge off of this, but they've been saying that this is the year that it's going to happen. And, good on Watt and Minka for getting them to finally budge off the top of the market when it comes to that positionally and non-quarterback. But I will still believe it when I see it, when you talk about, let's say, a top 3 or top 4 guy pushing them for fully guaranteed money past year one, especially at the wide receiver position.
Sure, but my point is it'll be an obstacle and something I'm sure Pickens camp will be angling for. And will that create friction in trying to get a long-term deal done beyond just what the average yearly value is?
Sure. Look, this goes back to what I said at the top of this topic conversation here. I struggle just with the overall premise that week one, and not that he's not deserving or anything like that. I'm just talking about the person, the position, the organization. And you know me, I'm all about numbers and fall and this stuff. And if it's all I did the rest of my life, I'd be happy, just following the monetary and the cap and the cash and all like that. I am struggling with the fact that we could get to week one or the potential of getting to week one of 2025 and turning around and looking at this chart of APY and George Pickens being firmly at the top of it.
Sure, I get that, but how do you deal with that then? He's not going to take below market. You could just try to not pay him and just say, all right, you
won't see him then.
Right. Yeah, you won't see him in OTAs and hold it in training camp. But my point is something's got to give here. Either you have to sit there and say we're not going to pay the guy, or we're going to have to do that. Now, there's also the question: do you want to pitch? You could have that conversation. Sure, I was going to say, just in terms of the extension, just on that alone, do you want to hitch your wagon to Pickens long term? Do you feel comfortable with him in terms of how he's matured and grown and all those things? It was a storyline last year. We'll see how this year goes, obviously. But there will certainly be pushback of some people saying, rightly or wrongly, don't pay this guy. I don't trust this guy. Is he going to be a problem 2 years from now? And we're stuck with this contract. That's will be like. That'll be a talking point that comes up next year.
I agree. And it's we're talking about it now, but we'll see, because it's off season, it's slow, but it will definitely be a topic coming out of the 2024 season, especially if he has the kind of season that we think he can have.
Right. And that's my main point here. It's not to get too much into the weeds of will they, won't they, should they, shouldn't they, but it will be the storyline, I think, of the internal Steelers this time next year. And expect if Pickens has a really good year, he's not only going to get paid, he's going to get paid probably more than what people currently think.
And once again, if we're having a conversation about one of these quarterbacks getting paid, then it's been a good year.
Right. That'll also be the conversation to be had next year too. But that should be resolved by March. I mean, that won't be a May or August kind of a storyline with the way Pickens could be.
Right now, they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Their top 6 highest paid players as far as APY go on the team are all defensive players.
Yeah, and I mean, I know that's been a critique of Pittsburgh. I know Colin Cowherd's probably, he just had a sixth sense somewhere after you said that comment, because he's always railed against the team. But whenever you drafted defensive players for 7 straight years and they all got paid first, that number will begin to shift here as other guys get paid, as Pickens potentially gets paid. And, I don't know, I guess Freiermuth, I don't know if he'll crack that list. He won't obviously be super high on there, but he'll get paid, and you'll start paying the offensive guys and hopefully a quarterback next year too.
And I would obviously later on this offseason, there's a chance that Freiermuth could crack the top 5.
Okay. Yeah. If he comes in, what would he need to get top 5? 13 million? What number would he have to hit to crack that
He
list?
would have to crack Patrick Queen's 13.66666 million, which is
you think he'll get there?
It's plausible. It's plausible. It's funny how the media just now saying don't be surprised if Pat Freiermuth gets a top 10 contract at around 13-14 million. There is proof of me saying that on Twitter and this podcast dating back over a year,
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I know there are a lot of people screaming, there's no way in hell I'd pay him that kind of money. But when you look at the APY around, at the tight end position right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Dalton Schultz is sitting there at 12 million at 10th overall. Above him's Cole Kmet at 12.5. Njoku at 13.687. It's hard to imagine Freiermuth not slotting in somewhere around in there.
Yeah, I think he'll want to at least get top 10 and beat Schultz and Komet, who got paid last year. Maybe the question, I think, does he surpass Njoku? Might be the question, I think, on a Freiermuth deal, assuming that it does occur. Why would this team not do an extension with James Daniels? I'm trying to figure out. I think was it Dale or somebody said a couple of weeks ago that he didn't expect an extension to occur. What would be the reason to not do a long-term deal with in his prime starting guard?
Just the guard market, maybe in general.
I mean, it's hot now, but it's not going to get cheaper next year.
Right.
So I don't know. Don't know about that.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I other than you mentioning it at various times during the off season, I didn't put it in my, I haven't been planning for it.
No, I know. I just wonder, do they question, is he the right fit in the Arthur Smith offense? I don't know why he wouldn't be. He's athletic. He can move. I mean, that's some of the tenets of the zone-based system that Smith will run with the run game.
I like him, but do you seriously consider him a top 10 guard in the National Football League? I don't have probably not. But I don't know if he's too far outside of that. But again, when it comes to the market and paying these guys, is Jared Goff the second best quarterback in football? No, but he's getting paid like it from an average yearly value standpoint. I mean, that's how the market goes. These guys have to top each other, and guys get paid. I mean, is he worth a long-term deal that pays him serious money? I think he is. That's kind of the way that I base off of. Do you engage in contract talks, and then the market kind of dictates what that number is from there. Yeah, well,
I mean, is who's better, Kevin Dotson or James Daniels?
Dotson looked good on tape last year, man.
Yeah, he did.
I don't know how much you watched of that.
You probably saw more.
I had one of my eye firmly fixed on it.
Sure. But it's not outlandish to say that they're in comparable territory. I'm not trying to really get to the answer of who is better, but they're similar players probably in terms of where their talent is viewed.
And once again, I think Daniels played fine. I mean, if you want my honest opinion, I think Dotson outplayed him last season.
Okay, that might be true. Yeah, it is obviously a little bit of apples and oranges comparing different teams and systems and what their asked and demands are. But I think point is, Daniels has just played well, and dude's 26, and he's in that same range as a Dotson or Robert Hunt or somebody like that. And that, I don't know. I mean, I just think it's worthy of a contract, especially for a team that can spend some cash. And I don't know what his cash number will change too dramatically based off this previous deal, but I think he paid good players.
Yeah, well, it doesn't sound like it's going to happen. And like I said, I haven't been planning for it.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, any other final thoughts here, Dave? I know we took a lot of time on that, but it's a slow Friday.
How about an update on third year? Everybody's waiting on this Friday, second week of OTAs to wind down, and I know the one thing that they're waiting to hear about.
Yes, it is the rookie contract of Zach Frazier and potential guarantee money changes. So we save the best for last, Dave.
We're obviously joking there. We know you all aren't sitting on pins and needles for this, but it's something I love following along with. We saw the Houston Texans sign Blake Fisher to his rookie contract a couple of days ago now, and that's interesting because of where his slotting is. And what's even more interesting is that he received 4% of his third year money as guaranteed. Now, the big picture there is that where he was drafted, which was what, 59th overall, is that right?
See, 59th or 57th? I will pull it up here. He was 59th. You are correct, sir.
Right, 59th overall. And if you go back to last year at 49th overall was Keanu Benton. He was the last guy of those second rounders to receive any of his third year money being fully guaranteed in his rookie contract. And we talked a couple of weeks ago when we discussed me writing about could Zach Frazier be the last Steelers draft pick signed this season. We talked about how those agents are constantly trying to push that push back that line in the sand as where the line gets drawn about, the 3rd-year guarantees. And boy, that line took a heck of a jump, did it not? And it's not done yet, but we know that Roger Rosengarten, who was the 62nd overall selection, has signed his contract, and he did not receive any guaranteed money in year 3. So there's a good bet that Fisher is the new line in the sand. And if indeed that is the case, Zach Frazier is going to get him some guaranteed money in year 3. Now, there is a large group there between Jonathan Brooks for the Panthers at 46th overall and on through the 58th overall selection, who all those guys remain unsigned. However, you do now have where Brooks was drafted at 46 overall, and you know that the reports are that he got 85% of his year 3 money fully guaranteed. And now you really have a working floor, if you will, with Blake Fisher at 4% guaranteed. Zach Frazier, give Zach Frazier a W here, because he won and did absolutely nothing. He's going to get some. He's going to get some guaranteed 3rd-year money here, and now it's just a matter of where does the percentage come in at. It, to me, you just do the simple math. Yeah, potentially. I think as much as half. I think the Steelers might buck that still. We'll have to see where some of these other guys obviously slot in at. But I think anywhere between 30 and 50% of his year 3 money could wind up being fully guaranteed. Now, does this mean that we have a kind of a ceiling and a floor with Brooks and Fisher? Does that mean that we should expect Frazier to sign his contract by the end of OTAs next week? Probably not. I think you still got here's what I think you're going to see, though. I think you're going to see a couple of these guys from 47th to 58th overall start to sign their deals now. Sure. Either starting today or into next week. And if that happens, in other words, this is coming together now. The dominoes are starting to fall here, and it shouldn't be. By the time mandatory minicamp rolls around the end of that, there's probably a decent chance that Frazier signs his deal. And but the big takeaway here now is that Frazier should get guaranteed money in year 3, and it's only a matter of percentage amount at this point now.
Sure. Good call. Good catch by you. Yeah. Fisher 59 gets it. Then you can guarantee that Frazier at 51 is going to get some level of it, more than what Fisher got. It becomes a question of how much. You probably, if you're the Steelers, if you're Cole Marcoux and Omar Khan, you probably wait and see what happens in front of you with Sandra Still and Chris Jenkins, what they get. But I would say, yeah, maybe 50% 3rd-year guaranteed is going to be what it comes in at. But we'll have to watch what happens right behind Frazier, what A.D. Mitchell with the Colts gets. If he gets 50%, then you can certainly bet that Frazier's camp is going to want 50% minimum as well. And so that will also maybe continue to change that floor.
Will Frazier sign? Will Frazier sign before what the guys on either side of him is I don't know how to put that into a sentence here, but
will he sign first, or will the guys sandwiching him sign first? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, and that would be Mike Sainer Still or Adonai Mitchell there on either side of him.
I was tossing and turning last night, wondering who will sign first, Sanders Still. I don't know. No, I was not. Who knows? It just depends on a million different factors. Did Benton? When did Benton sign last year? Did he sign later in the process? Did he sign earlier?
It was later. Didn't he and
no, Porter was last second.
Oh no, What didn't Benton and Broderick sign it on the same day?
Maybe. I don't know when what day was that. It looks like it was June 23rd. They signed Jones and Benton. So I think Pittsburgh was kind of holding out now that they were that last of the guaranteed monies. There might have been more of a dance there.
Right.
I'll guess that at least one of Sanders still. I'll guess that Mitchell signs, and then like 2 days later, Frazier signs, because once Mitchell sets that floor right behind him, then it really kind of clears up what Frazier's going to get.
All right. Let's see. You got the Commanders involved. You got the Commanders and the Colts involved here. I'm going to say that Zach Frazier ends up being the last of those three.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense. Pittsburgh typically tends to wait things out, so wouldn't shock me.
All right. I'm glad everybody hung on this late in the podcast to make sure we got to that topic. I know everybody's excited to go into their weekend now that they have that information. But that's what we do.
Let's get to some reader emails, close out today's show so I can go watch the trailer for College Football 25, which I know has released, which I want to go check out very much.
All right. You been playing that baseball game any?
I have not. I've been playing some piano more lately. I was learning, banging around the keys last night a little bit, having a good time.
Richard Jameson writes in, I think I heard you talk about passes on kickoffs. I had never heard of such a thing before. Can you please explain the rules about pass on the kickoff? Come on, Richard. You've seen the backwards pass. I mean, obviously the ball can't, I think Richard had a little bit of a brain fart there.
Yeah, Dave's not saying a literal forward pass. He's talking a backwards pass, which would be considered a lateral, but we all get the concept of throwing the ball across the field to the other return guy is what Dave was saying.
Yeah, I guess I got to spell things out more for people here. Adam Sheets writes in, guys, the run game improved significantly when they went from mostly zone runs under Canada to a lot of gap scheme and split zone under Sullivan. Why would they hire an OC who seems like the biggest diehard for outside zone? Here's the thing that Smith still run a lot of inside zone stuff.
I think the question is how much power will he run? Because you saw Pittsburgh really take its offense up a notch because they didn't run a single gap run the first month of last year, which I thought was a terrible idea. But Smith he's rooted in wide zone, but he's not just wide zone. I mean, he'll have a varied run scheme. So as long as there's some variation, they still ran a ton of zone last year when they were running more power. But as long as there's a variation, then they'll be okay.
I think and I'll read the rest of this question here in a moment. But the biggest thing is you would like to see some outside zone run more than what we've seen it run.
Yeah, I mean,
I think they got the personnel to do it.
Sure. I mean, if you got Fautanu starting and if you get Jones on, say, the left side, I mean, you got Daniels and Frazier, say, Malu, that's a line that can run it. They're going to be varied, I think. So, I mean, it's going to be a lot of zone, but inside zone, outside zone, the difference is not dramatic. The aiming point of the tight end change, or the aiming point of the running back changes a bit, typically more towards the tight end. Whatever they run, just be varied with it and be successful with it. He
says, how flexible will Smith be about running his stuff versus playing to the team's strength? I mean, that's a question that you ask about, any OC, right?
Sure. It's the $1 million question. I mean, they've talked about it openly and Tomlin's discussed it. Smith has discussed it. I mean, every coach says that we're going to run to the strengths of our team and our personnel. I mean, it kind of remains to be seen. I mean, I think you're going to see certainly Arthur Smith's stamp and flair. So I would just have to kind of watch and wait and see. We can discuss it all we want right now, but we'll have to see it on tape, on paper, or not on paper, but on tape on the field and judge the results.
Let's see. Could the improvement last year have been more due to better play calling, setting up the run, as opposed to the team only being good at gap scheme? He writes.
No, I think it just was good for them to be varied, for them to mix things up and offer more concepts to it. I think that was healthy. And then just when you added, the run game got really strong once Broderick Jones took over at right tackle. I don't want to say it was solely because of him, but you had a much more effective run blocker at right tackle in Jones than you did Chuck Wumakor for, and that seemed to play a role. And then the line got a bit healthier too. There were injuries early in the year with Moore. I think Daniels missed some time as well. So those probably played some factors. And it has felt like for the 2 years under Pat Meyer, it's taken about half a season for this run game, this O-line to warm up. And once they get going, they really gain some traction. But that can't happen this year. You can't take half a season to get your run game going. So that's going to be, to me, the biggest point early on this year is an immediate successful run game, not a run game that warms up around November.
what were we talking about last year? Oh, bully ball identity and all like that. And that's going to be our identity. And all, look, they're trying to insult. They're not using the same term. The bully ball phrase has seemed to have gone by it's not as trendy to say that right now, but I mean, that's who they want to be. Without a doubt, this team's got to run the football, right? And they've got to run it effectively right out of the chute. Plain and simple.
Sure. The number one word I've heard from the offense this year is physical. We want to be the most physical team. Every team. No coach ever says we want to be the least physical team in football. So it all sounds good. But I do think you've seen more of an effort of matching the words to the personnel in the investments when you draft offensive line as heavy as Pittsburgh did in 2024 with Tanu in the first round, a mauling run blocker, Frazier in the second round. Maybe not Maulings might be a little too strong, but technician that can certainly bury some people with just good technique and super strong. And then McCormick, who's got that old school gritty road grader type nature, just in the way that they're drafting and assembling their team is, I think, matching the way that they talk about their team and the vision they have for their team. And to me, that is honestly the number one positive thing they did this offseason was, in 2021, there was no vision, there was no plan. It was just a collection of dudes. In 2022, maybe you made some steps there. In 2023, you were kind of getting closer to that vision and personal aligning. I think this year you're finally, hopefully, fully in lockstep with your vision and your identity matching with your personnel and how you actually will execute on the field.
Well put. All right, Rob Jones writes in, on a recent pod, you guys discussed teams not kicking off to Cordero Patterson. With needing 2 guys on the field to return, you will need to carry he writes, at minimum 3 players on the 53-man roster that are return capable, I would think, he says. Who else besides Quez Watkins, wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5, would be those possible guys currently on the roster? First and foremost, someone else, maybe we can parlay in some question along with this about someone wrote in, I can't find it here, about kicking away, if teams were to kick away from Cordero, can't they kind of line up both the guys in the middle and, try to run to the kind of Kelly Leak it? I think somebody wrote.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get the Kelly Leak? Is that?
I do not, over my head.
Okay.
What is that? Is that
I was kind of that person showed their age. Kelly Leak was in the Bad News Bears and he played outfield. He was the best player on the team, and the coach kind of had him kind of ball hogging and trying to get to every ball that he could in the outfield and all like that. And that's what you mean. That's what people mean when they say go Kelly Leak. Try to make all the plays on the field. So
I see.
Yeah, I'm showing my age there. Boy, the Bad News Bears films were huge back when I was a kid. Look, do you want your returner kind of in the middle of the field, even though he's part of 2 of them, and then running towards whatever sideline if the ball's not kicked? To me, an opposing special teams coordinator would love you having your guy running a lot of yardage in one direction to field a kickoff, right?
Yeah, again, it's just one of those questions that are hard to answer with how many changes there are and how new this rule is going to be. And what is the right answer? I don't think any coach would say that they know exactly how to adjust and what the perfect solutions are. It's going to be, I think you try it. I think you see how it looks, and maybe it's more effective. Maybe it's not. There's a lot of complication to it. But that is a concern about teams intentionally kicking away from Patterson if you kind of declare where he aligns, pre-kick.
And look, you will. I don't think you specifically have another quote unquote returner on the team. More so that you have returner capable guys.
Well, what's the difference between you don't want a pure returner, but
right.
You need somebody with that skill set. And that's a fair question. Who else is there? With Quez, he's not even done a ton of kicks. He's done a little bit, but it's not like he's a ace return guy. Calvin Austin, does he get a look? This will sound crazy. I'm not necessarily advocating for it, but you put a Jalen Warren back there. That's going to be interesting if it's going to be an actual play. That guy could do some damage on a return and may not start a lot of drives, so he can go catch his breath on the sideline.
And do you want more running back like guys in that role?
That's been a lot of the commentary, that it's going to be treated more like a run play, and you may want somebody that can break a tackle. Listen, if you on a kick return, if you break one tackle, you got a really good chance of having a great to awesome to touchdown scoring return, just in general. And on these new rules, maybe that changes. Now I get there's the risk of Warren getting hurt and all those types of things, and the additional hits he'll take because of it. I'm just speculating. Again, I think teams are going to go out there and try a bunch of funky stuff and see what it works, and just kind of spin the dial and see how things go in the preseason. I wonder in training camp, will they practice a live return? They almost never do it, but there's going to be, you won't have the car crashes anymore, and so you're reducing the risk of guys getting hurt. They did it during the COVID year because you didn't have preseason. That's how Ray McDonald or McLeod, made the team, because he had a kick return in one of those sessions. I think you might see some live returns in camp this year.
All right, that'll be something. And you always usually report what the lines look like anyway, but it'll be different now with two back.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be reporting the whole unit probably, because I want to know who the blockers are. Are they using linemen? Are they using defensive linemen to go cover? I mean, it's going to be usually the special team sessions and kick returns when they practice them. It's kind of, okay, I can tweet out some things and I'll look at my notes. It's going to be all eyes on Danny Smith and that unit this year.
Is that the thing you're most excited about when looking ahead to camp this year? Or if you had to name the top 3 things you're looking forward to with training camp right now, what would those be?
It's like my children that I don't have. It's hard to pick your favorite. I mean, you're looking at everything. With this offseason, it's hard to not talk about the quarterbacks and what things look like with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, which is still a crazy thing to say out loud, compared to 3 months ago. You didn't think you'd be having that type of conversation. The new look Arthur Smith offense, I think it's just in general something to watch. But yeah, it probably would crack the top 3 in terms of just things I want to see how it looks to start camp.
All right, I saved the best question for last here.
Right.
How, and this is from me, how is your mattress search going?
Yeah, thank you to everyone who has sent me. There was a New York Times, some sort of article that was ranking the top 33 mattresses. I paused the mattress search. I bought a pillow, which I really do like, and so that seems to be maybe I didn't need a mattress as much as I needed a better pillow. So that's kind of my starting point right now.
If you know Alex the way I know Alex, that's a huge development.
It is. Oh, it was breaking news in the Kozora household. So yeah.
Okay. Anything else to wrap up here?
I think we should wrap up and come back on Monday.
All right. Stay safe. Don't put that car in the wall this weekend, Alex.
Yes.
I need you here. Okay. In the meantime, until Monday, as always, you can follow me on Twitter /X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button up right, navigational bar. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button. Follow the directions that way. Until Monday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.